What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Create 0.3, and today we are going to be going over an infinite gold generator. Now, if you've kept up with the series, you'll probably notice a lot of similarities between today's setup and the infinite iron generator we went over a couple episodes ago. That's mainly because there's a lot of overlap in the steps that are required to go from cobblestone to gold and cobblestone to iron. So a lot of the setup is going to be quite similar, but there's about twice as many steps required to make gold overall. So today's setup is going to be quite a bit larger and require a fair bit more resources to actually make. I will say it's going to look a lot cooler, but it's also going to require a lot more work, so we should probably jump into the requirements and quickly go through those because today is going to be a little bit of a longer episode, but you'll be rewarded with infinite gold, so why not? So I've divided the requirements into 3 different sections just to make our lives a little bit easier when it comes to understanding what's required for the setup and what's just going to make our lives a bit easier. Now, everything on the left here is going to be required for the setup itself, and that's where most of the resources are going to go. Everything in the upper right-hand portion here is going to be used to set filters in the setup, so it's not necessarily required right out the gate, but you will eventually need each of these just to properly filter things out. So unless you want to be sitting around waiting for these to drop as you slowly process things step by step, I would definitely advise you to get one of each of these before you jump into it. And then finally, the bottom left here just has some miscellaneous blocks that will be used for both building around the setup as we put everything together, because it is relatively tall, and then also for containing the fluids, since we do have a fair bit required here. Now, everything required for the setup itself will be 5 mechanical drills, 6 millstones, 7 encased chain drives, 5 chutes, 3 buckets of water, 2 buckets of lava, 6 gearboxes, 6 cogwheels, 2 mechanical belts, 11 shafts, 2 crushing wheels, 3 encased fans, 3 large cogwheels, 6 brass funnels, 2 mechanical presses, a hopper, 2 depots, 3 andesite funnels, 10 vertical gearboxes, 3 chests, 2 filters, 2 basins. And boy, is that a mouthful. It's a ton of stuff for today's setup, so it's going to require a lot of resources to get going, but I definitely think it's worth it to get infinite gold. Then for the filters, we are going to need a block of clay, a clay ball, a piece of terracotta, and a piece of flint. Obviously, you only need one of those, but unfortunately, we need all those because these will be used to set up individual filters. For the stuff that we need for the actual filter pieces that we will put in, those can all be dragged over from JEI, so we don't need to have each one of those on hand, which is definitely nice. It's unfortunate we can't do that with the individual ones, but we want to make sure we have all these good to go. And then finally, I'm going to be using dirt just because it's pretty easy to break when we're trying to maneuver around the setup since it is 8 blocks tall. And then we're going to be using glass to contain the fluids just because it looks pretty nice. So we can grab all of this stuff out, and I don't even know if we're going to have enough inventory room for this, so we may need to dump some extra stuff in here. Let's see. Wow, it looks like we are short just a little bit. We're not going to need torches today, so we'll dump those back in there, and we just managed to fit everything in. So I've made this room specifically for setting up the gold generator in, and it's a little bit larger than it needs to be, but I'm going to go over the requirements for both the room size and the rotational power real quick before we jump into this. First off, you are going to need a room that is at least 17 blocks long, 8 blocks wide, and 7 blocks high. So like I said, obviously this is way bigger than we need, but you will at least need a room that size. And this is only going to take up one corner, so you will still have some free space in that room to work with, but you're going to need majority of it because it is a relatively large setup. Then for the rotational power coming in, you are going to want to have 9,504 stress capacity, assuming you want to run this at 48 RPM, which is the max speed you can run this at. And I'll go over why later. You can always reduce the speed you're running it at, which will obviously reduce the gold production, but also allow you to run it with less stress capacity required. And not everyone has access to 9,504 stress capacity, so obviously it's totally understandable if you need to reduce it. But those are going to be the 2 requirements for this setup. So now I'm going to assume that you have everything set up and we can jump into building this. And we're going to go over it from start to finish like you would logically do to go from cobblestone to gold, just so it's a little bit easier to understand the purpose of each portion of this. And so we're going to be starting out with getting the cobblestone and converting it to gravel. And this is going to be done pretty high up on the setup. So we're going to transfer our rotational power up. And something you should note is you probably want to have the rotational power switched off or disconnected when you start setting this up. Otherwise, you're going to start mining cobblestone and it's going to go everywhere and you're not going to be able to process it. So we're going to grab out our regular cogwheels and our large cogwheels, and we're going to put down a large cogwheel right off of the initial rotational input. Then we're going to put down a regular cogwheel, then another one, and then right back over another large cogwheel. And what this is going to do is transfer our rotational power up and allow us to have this upper one running at 48 RPM while eventually pulling additional 96 RPM power off of these cogwheels right here. So that's going to be important because a lot of this setup is based around RPM ratios to make sure that every single machine in here is running at different RPMs to match the processing times, because things like the mechanical drill, millstone, washing, cooking, all of that requires different processing times, and we're trying to make sure that there is little to no downtime in the setup, but also no backup being generated. So that's why you're going to notice that everything is going to be running at a different RPM, and you need to be very careful when it comes to transferring rotational power between these and utilizing the correct speeds. So now that we have this up there, it's time to set up our drills. So we're going to want to build up here. And normally we would just place down a regular drill here, but because we are using 5 of these, we're going to be pulling out some encased chain drives, using them to transfer our rotational power along the side here. So we're going to build over 5 and keep putting these down, and then place all 5 of our drills on the front of these. So just like that, and then put our drills down right here. So now that we have the drills set up, we need to put down the millstones, and we're going to want these to go 1 block in front and 1 block down from all these drills, so we can just place them along the dirt that we built up here. And what this is going to do is have the cobblestone generated directly in front of the drill and directly over the millstone. Then when the drills mine it, it's going to get dropped because there's no chest connected to any of these for it to store them in, and it will fall directly into each of the millstones. And the nice thing is, because they're all adjacent, as you can see, they're just like cogwheels that connect, they're all going to transfer rotational power to each other, making our lives way easier. And now that means we need to start generating the stone. So we're going to grab out some glass just so we can make this look nice, and we're going to line right across the top of all these mechanical drills with glass, because we're going to be having lava right where our head is right now. And then we need to put down a little bit more to contain it. So we're going to put down glass right here on the side, and we're going to want to do the same thing over on this side right here. And then we're going to want to put some down right here, trying to make sure I don't fall off. But we're going to want to put glass across all of these so the lava will be contained right here. And then we want the water to be right here on this side. So we're actually probably going to have to break one of these and hop down just so we can build the rest of this. And then we'll put the lava down in a little bit. But we're then going to want to put glass right along the side of all of these millstones, because this is where the water is going to go. Put some on the side right here to continue containing it. And then we can use dirt right there to build right across the back of this. Same thing over here, just contain it on this side, and that should be good. So now we can get rid of all this dirt, and we should have a setup that will be able to contain both the water and the lava so it doesn't spill out and kill us or ruin all of our torches. And we can make our way back up there and place it down in a minute. But one more thing that we can do really quickly is put down the chutes that are going to go below all these millstones. So we're wanting to get the items out of these millstones quickly. You could use hoppers for this, or you could use chutes. It really doesn't matter. We're just going to put chutes down because I like the way they look, and we're never going to need to have an internal buffer on these, so it doesn't really matter. But these are going to drop all the items out of the millstone, which will take all the gravel and put it into the rest of our setup. And that is going to be continued right over here. But quickly, before we do that, we can now build our way back up and put down our lava and water right in the center up here, just so that we can verify that it does in fact generate the stone properly. So we can come over here, and we're only going to need 1 bucket of water and 1 bucket of lava. You just want to make sure that you place them down in the middle, because the water will always go far enough no matter where you put it. But if you put the lava too far over, it's not going to extend all the way. So we're going to put down the lava right here, and then we can watch as it generates stone over all these millstones right in front of each of these drills. So there we go. We're now good on that front. we have the stone up there. It's going to get turned into cobblestone. It'll go into the millstones. The millstones then turn it into gravel, and they drop it. And now the next step is going to be taking the gravel and turning it into sand. And if we look at the uses for this, we can see that yes, you can mill it, but unfortunately today we need to use the crushing wheels, as that's what's going to give us sand instead of just flint, and also a chance at a clay ball. So we're only going to be using one set of crushing wheels, and these are going to go directly under this chute right here on the far left of the setup. So we can just put blocks down to build these off of, just like that, and then get rid of the dirt. And what will happen here is this chute will drop stuff directly into these crushing wheels. And then over here, we are going to put down a belt that carries all the stuff from these chutes over to the crushing wheels. So we're going to just put down a shaft right here, a shaft right here, and then take one of the mechanical belts out and connect these two. So all the items will fall from these chutes onto the belt will carry it over, and also dump the items directly into the crushing wheels. So we only need one of these setups, and we're just going to run it at a very, very high RPM. So now that we've made it this far in the setup, it's probably a good time to start bringing some additional rotational power to both the crushing wheels and the millstones. So we're going to build right off this cogwheel here, and we're going to put down a large cogwheel right behind it, and then build off that to the bottom left with a regular cogwheel too. So what we have right here is going to be the 48 RPM coming in, and then we are going to double that at this cogwheel right here, and then double it again at this one right here. This will be sending power to the crushing wheels, so these will be running at 4 times the RPM of the drills, and then this will bring the millstone rotational power, which will be running at 2 times the speed of the mechanical drills. And that should make it so that all of these will run properly, and they will be able to process all the items in the correct time, so there is no downtime, but also no backup. So we're going to pull off this regular cogwheel, or this large cogwheel right here with the shaft, then put down a regular cogwheel right next to the millstone, and then a vertical gearbox right there, because it doesn't really matter the direction of rotation for this. They're going to run either way. And then for the crushing wheels, where it's not necessarily as simple for the rotation, we are going to pull off of this cogwheel right here with a regular gearbox so that we can transfer the power horizontally using a shaft, then another shaft, another gearbox, and another shaft. And what this will do is make sure that these are both having inverted directions of rotation. So eventually we're going to have to make sure that with the rotation speed controller I have set to 48 over there when we turn it on, that we have it going the correct direction. As long as we have that set to the correct direction, and we're going to have to evaluate that when we turn this on, everything in this whole system will run properly. So you might have to flip it between negative and positive one time just to get it all working properly, but this right here will verify that these are in fact spinning towards each other when we get the eventual input set correctly. So now all of this stuff has power, and we can quickly get power for this mechanical belt over here too by putting down a cogwheel on this far millstone, and then bringing it down with a shaft and putting down a vertical gearbox here. And then this will pull all the items over and dump it into these running crushing wheels. So now we have everything set up to give us our sand, flint, and clay ball output, and we need to start working with that to get it further in the setup. So the main thing we're going to be running across now that we have everything converging to these crushing wheels will be a belt running along this wall right here for 13 blocks. So this is going to be formed directly below the crushing wheels, and then we're going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and put the second shaft down right here, and then we can connect these. And this is where pretty much the rest of the process is going to occur as we carry it along here. And the first step is going to be using an encased fan to wash what is dropping out of the crushing wheels to convert the sand into clay. So if we look at the uses for this, if we wash it, it will convert it into clay at a 25% chance. And so we'll have our regular clay balls, we'll have our converted clay balls, and then we'll have our flint that we need to deal with. So we're going to put down our encased fan right on the back right here. So we're going to put it down just like this. blowing across the items, and this will push them in this direction, which will avoid the issue that you typically would run into where certain items will fall on this and only a couple can be picked up by the belt, but the belt does have an internal storage where it can only have one item on each portion of it, so then other ones will land on top, and we want to make sure they are getting pushed into the filter that will be going right here. So we want to make sure it's blowing in the correct direction, and then to do this, we're going to put 2 encased chain drives right here. So one on the back of this and then one on this cogwheel, and this will transfer the rotational power from this down to the encased fan, and this will then be blowing out here. The RPM for this really doesn't matter because encased fans do not wash any quicker with higher RPM, they only blow further. But that's not important in this case. The only way that you can increase washing time is with additional encased fans blowing from different directions on the same item, but because this is going to be bulk washing, it's not a concern. So now we are going to put down some glass on both sides of this and put down some water in here because that's going to be used for the washing. But we're going to make sure that we put down our basin and our filter right here first just so it doesn't spill out. So we'll take out one of the basins and put that not on this block, but on this one right here. And then we are going to be putting a brass funnel on this side of it. So we're going to want to click that down right there, make sure it orients properly. And as you can see right here, this is technically taking up this block. Admittedly, we're probably going to want to break this crushing wheel right here to set the filter on this because it kind of blocks it otherwise. But what's going to happen here is we put down water right in this area. The items fall into it. The water is then getting blown across the items here that are both in this block and eventually here. And they won't be allowed through this funnel because we're going to set the filter to clay balls. So, whoops, it's scrolling up the funnel right there as I was trying to scroll it. We want this to come down. We're just going to put a clay ball in this filter. So again, what's going to happen here is the sand will get washed into clay and then go into the basin. The clay balls will immediately be allowed in here and the flint will just sit right here. So we can get rid of this dirt right now because it's kind of a mess and I guess it just wants to fall onto our belt system. But you can go over here and get rid of this too. So now we can quickly deal with the flint, and we can do that by simply coming down here. And again, we have our blocks going on this belt. Super annoying that it does that, but we're going to put a chest down right here. And we're going to store our flint in this chest. Now you have the option of simply putting down a chute where this is and dropping it into lava or a fire or a cactus if you really don't care about the flint, but because I know some people have stated that they either have uses for it in a mod pack or we can eventually use it in Create for some things like generating things like andesite and other blocks, well, we might as well save it for the time being, but definitely something to be cautious of because eventually this will fill up. So we're going to put down, if we can properly put it down, a double chest down here, but I don't even have an axe on me, so it's going to take a second to break. Let's get both of these back and we can put down a double chest because we want to make sure that our setup is not eventually going to stop running due to running out of space. So we have a double chest down there, and then we're going to put a brass funnel going down into the chests right like this and set the filter to flint. And this is going to be able to take all the flint that would otherwise land up here and put it into this chest. So we can see like that, all the flint will be dumped there. We can just cover this up, or you can put a trap door down if you eventually want access to this, but not super critical. You could just dump it into lava again if you don't care. And now we are left with this basin right here with a bunch of clay balls in it, and we want to turn those into blocks of clay. So the way we do that is obviously using a mechanical press, and we're going to put that down directly on top of this. And we need to put down our crushing wheel again right over here that we picked up to set the filter, right like that. And one of the nice things about this that we are going to go over is we are able to input rotational power very easily around this mechanical press because this does not interact with blocks at all around it. So now that we have our mechanical press down, we need to give it some rotational power. We want to make sure that it is facing with the rotational input on the same side as the crushing wheels. And we're just going to grab some power from right over here. So we're going to build up and put down 2 encased chain drives, building right off of this, coming down 1. And I believe I didn't include these in the initial count. I had to go grab 2 more. So unfortunately, I think I missed those. But that should be the last set of encased chain drives that we need. And then finally a gearbox right off of this one so that it goes right into here. Now, the direction of rotation and RPM really doesn't matter for this, so we don't need to worry about it. It's going to have pretty minimal stress impact, even though we're taking a pretty high speed. But now we will be left with this basin full of clay blocks. And now we need to move on to the next step, which is making terracotta. So what we're going to do is put down a brass funnel on this and put our clay block in here so that it's only pulling those out. And then next, we are going to be putting down an encased fan directly in front of this, but up one. So we're going to grab out our encased fan right here, and we're going to want it to go pretty much right on top of where this is. So we're going to be putting down a gearbox right here under the mechanical press, and then putting down an encased fan in front of that. Now this may look super wonky, but the mechanical press does not interact with this gearbox. It will press right through it into the basin. So this is a really easy way to keep this super compact. It looks super messed up with how close everything is here, but it still works. So we're going to go with it. And then we are going to be putting down a depot that this will feed into right over here. So we need a depot that is going to go, I believe it should be right here. And then we're going to put down a andesite funnel, pulling stuff into that depot after it comes out this brass one. So everything now gets picked up here, and we need to cook this down. So we're going to put down some additional glass around this encased fan on each side, since this is where some lava is going to go. And we're going to wait to put this down for a second because we don't want it spilling out the front, as we are going to put above and over one from this depot another millstone. And so this step is going to be taking the terracotta and turning it into red sand. So we need another brass funnel on the side of this if, again, it wants to orient properly. And it does not appear it wants to. So let's try and get this. There we go. So now we have this brass funnel. It needs to be set to a filter of terracotta, right like this. And then we want to make sure that we take this arrow right here and use the wrench to adjust it. So instead of coming from the millstone to the depot, it's going from the depot up to the millstone. And then we can get rid of this dirt right here. And now we have the process that will make the clay blocks. These will pull out, go into this depot. Then we're going to put down some lava right here. And because this is treated as a block, it won't spill out. This will cook the clay that's on the depot, turn it into terracotta, which will then be sucked into this millstone. Now we're going to be getting red sand out of this millstone. If we look at the steps right here, the uses for terracotta, you get red sand out of this 100% of the time. So the next thing we need to do is wash this to get our gold nuggets and dead bushes, unfortunately. But we still need to get that. So we're going to be pulling out of this millstone using a hopper into another depot. So the depot is going to go right here, and we're going to use a hopper, if I could find it, right here to pull out of it, because the only output we're going to get from this is going to be red sand, and there's no way we could pull out of the millstone before it's done milling, so there's no need for a filter. And to keep this all level, we're going to pull it out of the bottom. So now this is going to have red sand on it, and we're going to be doing some washing on this depot. But because we don't have on this one anything that's going to be obstructing this upper block right here, we can take our bucket of water, and we're going to want to enclose this right away before we do this, but put glass on each side, and then put our encased fan down really quick on the back here, and then just rotate it so it's facing in to where the dirt is. But then we're going to want to put our water directly on top of this. And this is a really nice thing you can do, because if the items are sitting in the depot with water directly above it, whether you're blowing or pulling the water back using the encased fan, it will still wash the item. So in this case, the direction of rotation really doesn't matter, which is definitely nice for us because it gives us a little bit of leniency when it comes to that. Now, the next thing we're going to have to do is give rotational power to this millstone really quick. So we're just going to grab out one shaft, our cogwheel, and a vertical gearbox, put the shaft down right here in the mechanical belt, put down our vertical gearbox, put down our cogwheel right here. And again, the direction of rotation should not matter here. So we can just put down a shaft right here, and this will pull the power coming through this belt to power this millstone. So now we have all that powered. Now we're getting out our gold and our dead bush, so we need to put down another brass funnel right on this side of the depot and filter these out, because we definitely don't want additional things coming out of here like the red sand when they haven't been washed yet. So this is going to be the first time we get to use the filter, and we're just going to right click on it when it's in our hand, and we're going to search up both the dead bush and we're going to want the gold nuggets. So we're going to grab both of these out, put them as whitelist on the filter, and then put the filter in there. So now we'll be getting out those, and the next step is to have these going into a basin. So the next basin is going to go right here, because we need to leave room for another andesite funnel to go on this side, and it didn't want to orient properly, so let's get this back and see if it'll go right this time. There we go. So because we're filtering stuff right here, we want all of them to go into this basin. And yet again, we are going to be putting down a mechanical press on top of this basin like so. Then this basin is going to have a brass funnel put on this side of it. And we have to set another filter. And this filter is going to be set to a gold ingot and a dead bush, because we want to pass the dead bushes through here with no issue. So now we've set up pretty much the remaining portions of the setup other than the final collection chest, but we need to give rotational power to both this mechanical press and this encased fan. So I believe I actually forgot 2 additional shafts from the requirements. I know they're pretty small, but we still need them. So we're going to be putting one right here on this mechanical belt, and then we are going to be using a vertical gearbox to pull out of here. Then we're going to put in another shaft. And then we are going to be using a vertical gearbox right here too, if we could just put it down while we're on the belt, and then a vertical gearbox up here at the top, and then 2 horizontal gearboxes right here to input into this encased fan. So we have this set up right here. The encased fan is now receiving power. The mechanical press is receiving power. Both of these, the direction of rotation does not matter because of the mechanic we talked about with the water directly over the depot. And we are left with gold ingots and dead bushes coming out of here. And so the last step left for us is to put down a chest right here and put an andesite funnel into it. And again, it didn't want to give us the right direction, but there we go. And this final chest will have dead bushes and gold ingots in it. If you want to avoid the dead bushes the same way we did with the flint, then at the step before you get them, so that would be right over here, put a filter on here to only accept gold nuggets, and put a filter or put a funnel right below here with a filter for dead bushes into either a chest or a thing of lava. But we don't get enough of them for me to really care for right now because these are at the very end of our setup. So I'm just going to put them right into the chest and we should be good. And as you can see from our inventory, that's majority of the stuff we needed for today's setup. I believe though we're probably going to have to troubleshoot some rotation differences using these vertical gearboxes when we actually flick this on. So we should probably go turn it on, come back in here and look at the direction everything is going in, because I suspect certain things might need to be replaced with a shaft and a gearbox to alter the direction. So the rotational power is now on, but you guys can probably see if you look closely as to the one portion of this that isn't running right. And it's actually not running at all. This mechanical belt on the bottom, we never remember to give rotational power. So we're going to do that right over here. And we're going to put down a vertical gearbox, a second vertical gearbox right here, and then a shaft right here. And as you can see, it's now running and we got some serious mechanical pressing going on because there was a huge backup here. So eventually it'll stop running and we're going to have to catch up on all the items in here. But that was just because this ran for a while without me actually having the ability for items to get pulled in. But we can watch now as they go through the process. So the clay is getting put in here. This is getting put into clay blocks. They're coming out. They're getting cooked down. They're getting washed. And then they will be pulled out here into this basin. As you can see, we already have some gold in there. And eventually this will get smashed down into this chest right here. So when this is all running, it looks super cool. There's so much going on, so many industrial noises. I absolutely love it. And if it weren't for that initial screw up where this was not running, there would be no downtime in this setup, but there would also be no backup. So you can see that there's not going to be a backlog over here as we have a consistent stream of gravel coming into this. And down here, eventually there will be no backlog with the washing. And then here we will have all of these properly processed coming out and finally ending in gold ingots and dead bushes, of course. But that's going to be pretty much the entire setup for today, guys. You cannot go any higher than 6 of these, or 5 of these, I should say. Otherwise, you run into an issue where you get a backlog of gravel. And you can't run any higher than 48 RPM. Otherwise, you get the issue where stone forms. Then when it breaks immediately, cobblestone forms. And when the drills break that, it fires off randomly and does not get picked up by the millstones. And you'll end up getting lag from entities. So just 2 things to be cautious of with this setup. But I tried to design it in the most compact way possible while also keeping it visually appealing. It took a very long time to do that, so hopefully you guys enjoy this video and get use out of this setup. And I'm sure you guys will have improvements as you always do because you have great recommendations, but tried my best with it. So yeah, hopefully you guys like it, and I will talk to you later.